In the world of Formula One racing, Max Verstappen is widely regarded as one of the most exciting drivers of this era. He has been praised for his exceptional talent. Here are the top 7 moments of Max Verstappen's dominance. 2018 Austrian Grand Prix. It was during the 2016 Spanish Grand Prix that Max Verstappen made his debut for Red Bull Racing. On the opening lap of the race, both Mercedes drivers collided with one another, and Verstappen was able to capitalize on the situation to win the race. The next time that Mercedes had a double DNF was in the 2018 Austrian Grand Prix, when Max won the race once more. By the time Lewis Hamilton rolled to a halt this time though, Max was already leading and 30 seconds up the road. While driving into the Rindt curve, Verstappen overtook Kimi Räikkönen and moved into the second position as a result. When Valtteri Bottas came to a stop on lap 13, Max inherited the second place, and he was awarded the net lead of the race when Mercedes elected not to pit Hamilton under the ensuing virtual safety car. Max went on to win the race by a comfortable margin. On another day, Hamilton may have been able to build a pit stop gap, but in Austria, Verstappen managed his pace and maintained the margin he needed. The pass on lap 1 set the stage for his victory. It was the kind of risky maneuver for which he is often criticised when it does not work out. 2020 70th Anniversary Grand Prix. Every race in the first 4 rounds at the 2020 championship was won by Mercedes, who were clearly the class of the field. Max had different plans in mind for the second part of the doubleheader that was being held at Silverstone, even though it seemed like Mercedes would win again. On one of those rare hot British summer days, the softer Pirelli tyres deteriorated quite fast, notably on the Mercedes car. When Verstappen saw an opening, he chose to ignore his team's request that he preserve his own tyres and instead put pressure on Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton, which ultimately resulted in them having to make early pit stops. The Red Bull driver then extended his stint to nearly twice as long as theirs while maintaining a respectable speed, allowing him to restart the race right behind Bottas on fresher tyres and pass him immediately. So often, Verstappen's success has been the result of rapid pace and thrilling overtakes. However, on that day at Silverstone, it was Verstappen's perfect tactics and tyre preservation that saw him prevail over those in superior machinery. 2021 Dutch Grand Prix. When Verstappen arrived in the Netherlands for his very first home Grand Prix weekend, he carried the expectations of the whole Dutch country on his shoulders. Not only was Zandvoort returning to the calendar for the first time since the middle of the 1980s, but the Red Bull driver found himself in his first ever battle for Formula One championship against the power of Hamilton and Mercedes. Did he crack under the pressure? Absolutely not. Instead, Verstappen surged to the pole position and then blasted free of the 2 Mercedes drivers competing in the race. Hamilton finished 20 seconds behind Verstappen, while Valtteri Bottas finished over a minute behind Hamilton. Even though it may not have been one of the most thrilling of Verstappen's victories, this race is still among the most spectacular of all of his victories because he was under enormous pressure and yet he still delivered. Not only did he need a victory for his championship prospects, given that the race was to be followed by ones at 2 Mercedes strongholds, but he also had a whole country wanting him to win, and thousands of them were there in person to see him compete. Throughout the whole weekend, he didn't make a single mistake, and as a result, he won the pole position and never truly seemed to be in danger of losing the race. The Dutchman unequivocally showed that he is capable of performing well under duress throughout this race, which is a need for every Formula One driver who aspires to achieve ultimate greatness in the sport. If you're still watching and like the content, feel free to hit the thumbs up button. Thanks for doing that, let's move on. 2022 Hungarian Grand Prix. When a driver finishes 10th in qualifying at the Hungaroring, they typically have little more than a 5% chance of finishing in the top 5, perhaps a podium, if good luck smiles on them. Despite starting the race back in P10 due to an engine problem, Red Bull's Verstappen fought through the pack to pick up his 8th race win for the 2022 season. The Dutch driver had amazing speed early on in the Hungarian Grand Prix, which allowed him to pull into the top 5 places. Additionally, his team made the right strategic choices during the race, which allowed him to jump both Russell and Hamilton owing to his rapid pit stops. Even though he had a spin in the middle of the race, Verstappen still managed to demonstrate his superiority by twice passing his title competitor Leclerc on the track. You can't get much better than overturning a qualifying disaster by waltzing to the win with one of the best drives of his career so far, while his chief rival suffered a strategy nightmare and dropped 13 points. 2021 Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. In 2021, at the race in Imola, Verstappen and Hamilton had their first major altercation in the course of their fierce competition for the championship. Despite the fact that it was raining heavily before the start of the race, Verstappen was able to move up to 3rd place on the grid, pass his teammate Perez, and challenge Hamilton for the lead going into the first turn. While Hamilton maneuvered his Mercedes around Tamburello's outside, Verstappen remained steadfast on the inside line and emerged victorious despite having minor contact. From there, he batted away safety car restarts and the crossover from intermediates to slicks to keep the lead. Meanwhile, Hamilton lost control of his vehicle and went off the track, forcing him to make a hasty comeback drive from outside the top 10 all the way up to 2nd place. In the early going of his first title battle, Verstappen had communicated to his competitor Hamilton that he intended to challenge him for the championship by saying, "I'm coming for your crown." And he showed that by outclassing Hamilton at Imola. 2016 Spanish Grand Prix. Red Bull Racing were pretty brutal in demoting Daniel Kvyat a couple of races after the Russian had stood on the podium in China. After Verstappen's debut, however, while plenty of people were happy to grumble about the inelegance of the decision, nobody was suggesting it wasn't a good one. Verstappen immediately stepped into the RB12, learned the characteristics of the vehicle, and went on to win the race despite having very little time to prepare for it. When title rivals Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton collided, Verstappen, who had qualified fourth but lost out to Vettel before repassing the four-time champion, lined up second on the resulting safety car restart. The Dutchman maintained his position in a two-stop strategy, in contrast to his teammate Ricciardo's three-stop strategy, and fought off a late challenge from Raikkonen to produce a historic victory on his debut for Red Bull. As a result of the victory, the Dutchman became the youngest driver ever to win a Formula One race. It is impossible to conceive of a more challenging set of conditions under which to win a Grand Prix. 2016 Brazilian Grand Prix. Verstappen's effort at a soaking wet 2016 Brazilian Grand Prix amazed the F1 paddock and fans all across the globe. The Dutchman made sure that everyone was talking about him after the race by performing several impressive moves, including a spectacular spin and save on the main straight, bold passes on Kimi Raikkonen and Nico Rosberg, and a recovery from 16th to 3rd in 16 laps after a 5th stop for fresh tyres. The Dutch driver was spectacular. Verstappen gambled with his tyre selection and lost. As a result, he fell to 16th place with 14 laps left to go in the race. He had to execute a mini miracle to catch a spin. Everyone was stunned by what he accomplished over those 14 laps to get himself up to 3rd place. It seemed as if Verstappen was driving on a separate, drier surface than everyone else, and it was mesmerizing to watch. He was confident in his stopping positions and took decisive action while passing other drivers, quality befitting of a star. When Red Bull team boss Christian Horner was asked where this Verstappen race ranked amongst the best wet weather performances in the history of Formula One racing, Horner said it's right up there, while Toto Wolff, the team boss for Mercedes, referred to it as the Verstappen show and added that it was just great driving. Physics is being redefined. Now over to you. What's your best Verstappen performance since he joined F1? Let us know in the comment section below.